Guys, I want to thank the sponsors of the podcast. I want to thank goHunt.com, my friend Cody Nelson of 20 plus years. He's the optics manager over there. If you guys need any optical needs at all, anything to do with glassing, binoculars, tripods, spotting scopes, rifle scopes, anything to do with glassing, give Cody a call. 602-399-3699. That is his cell phone. You can also text him at that number. You can also call him at goHunt at 702-847-8747. I want to thank goHunt Optics for their sponsorship of the podcast. Guys, I also want to let you know that goHunt maps have been released and they are right now available to insider members. I have had an intimate role in this goHunt mapping process of getting these maps just how we need them. They are awesome for Western hunters. goHunt Maps is built for Western hunters. goHunt's first focus has always been creating solutions for hunters like us to make them as successful as possible, both for themselves and for the advancement of conservation. With the launch of goHunt Maps app, Western hunters are empowered to meet their needs all in one platform, discovering hunts with filtering 2.0 and draw odds, and preparing with expertise and gear, and now take maps into the field. Guys, I've had an intimate role in helping develop the app, and I think you're really going to like it. Make sure you're an insider member, so go to gohunt.com/jscott and sign up for an insider membership if you're not already an insider. I also want to thank Coues Ultralight Hunting. That is the gear that I wear on all of my hunts. To find out more, you can go to KUIU.com, KUIU.com. It's a direct-to-consumer company. You can order all of the products directly off the website. That's the only place you can get it. Go to KUIU.com. PhoneScope is the adapter I use to take videos and photos right from my iPhone 12 Pro right through my spotting scope or binoculars. Go to phonescope.com, use the JScott21 promo code, and you're going to get a 10% discount. Guys, let's get right to the episode. Guys, welcome to the J. Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I've got Ben Brochu of Shadow Valley Outfitters on the line. Ben, how are you?
Very well. How about yourself, Jay?
Good. I look forward to having you on the podcast again today. I know we had a great chat before, and I got some good feedback. We're looking at the Arizona deer application deadline coming up here quick, and I wanted to get you on and have a little chat about some of the deer that you've got going, the deer hunts and such down in southern Arizona.
Yeah, no, as always, I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks for having me on. And we're always willing to help anyone who has any questions or wants to talk shop and discuss strategy and, whatnot. So certainly appreciate the opportunity.
For sure. Ben, I'll let you give a little background on yourself, but when I first met you, you were actually with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. Give a little bit of background on that and then what you're doing now as well as your guiding.
So, we met, over a decade ago, I guess, probably in one of the sheep captures in the Superstitions or something. But, my history, I went to the U of A and graduated with a degree in wildlife ecology.
They still giving degrees out at U of A?
Very hard-earned ones, I should say. So, I did that, bounced around the state for a short time, and then got on with the Arizona Game and Fish Department. I worked for the Arizona Game and Fish for 14 years in various different capacities, and I was a game warden for 11 years, I guess. Focusing more on the southern part of the state, down 38, 29 for a short time, and then around Tucson, 37B, 31, 32, 33, and did a lot of stuff just out of the Tucson Region 5 area. So did that, and then probably, I guess, 5 years ago, I decided to make a change, I guess, in career paths, and I got hired with Tucson Fire Department, where I currently work, and I'm able to do that and then do the lots of hunting and guiding on the side and spend more time with the family and, do a lot of hunting with them as well. That's kind of where I'm at. And in terms of Shadow Valley Outfitters, Pat McCarty and Bob Dykeman started Shadow Valley late 15, early 16. And I joined up about, I guess, 3 years ago, and became a third owner. And my focus is Coues deer hunts and over-the-counter type hunts and elk stuff where I can help too. So everything's going good, and we're off to a busy start for the year, and eager to see what the deer stuff does. So.
Yeah, I keep hearing about early monsoon and a decent monsoon, so let's hope that that's the case. I know all of the Southwest needs it, but I know for sure Southern Arizona, all of Arizona needs it. So let's hope that the rain comes early and plentiful. Back to your years, 14 years at the Arizona Game and Fish, that being a wildlife manager and different units and whatnot, that also gave you the opportunity to be involved in a lot of helicopter surveys and ground surveys and all sorts of stuff. How do you think that that's helped you, in being a very successful Coues deer guide that you have been and that you are?
I mean, it certainly helps a lot. Hunting, being a successful hunter is all about knowing wildlife and their behaviors and different things like that. Habitats they like, patterns, and again, general behaviors. And however you can get that information, whether it's, just time spent boots on the ground, out scouting, glassing a lot, whatever else. I mean, it certainly, that's what it's all about. And, I'm in the unique opportunity that I was able to work for the department. I did a lot of wildlife captures out of helicopters, lots of surveys out of helicopters, lots of foot surveys, hunter check type things. And that, generally speaking, it's some additional information that you can kind of piece together the puzzle a bit better. And it's a unique perspective as well. So, I certainly was presented with a very unique opportunity, and I'd like to think that, I've got a different perspective, I guess, based on the totality of everything that I've either learned or participated in or been through. So.
Before we dive into talking about specific units, I want to ask you about actually specific time frames of the seasons of the hunts. And before we even get to that, ask you about, is your focus primarily on big, large trophy deer, or are you also doing lots of hunts where they're more opportunity type hunts and you're just taking, group of 2 or 3 guys that have, certain Coues deer tags and they just want to fill tags? What percentage is trophy deer driven and what percentage is opportunity?
Well, I mean, we like to try and specialize in the trophy component. In trophy, our goal is to kill or have our hunters kill a 100-inch or bigger type deer. Everyone wants a 200-inch mule deer, a 350 type elk, 80-inch pronghorn, and the goal generally for Coues deer is 100 inches. So that's our goal. We put in a lot of time and effort scouting and on the ground and different things to try and meet that objective. Now, with that being said, too, though, we also have a lot of people that just want a good representative buck. Especially non-residents who it's very difficult to draw a tag, and Coues deer are one of those exceptions where you can get a tag actually very easily in almost every year, depending on what you're looking for. So we have a lot of people that contact us too, saying, "Hey, I don't really care about numbers. I want this type of a hunt. I'd like a good mature buck," and we try and do that too. So I would say we probably are 60 to 70% in terms of more trophy type stuff, and the remainder is more opportunity, but still trying to specialize in that mature, nice, a good mature deer, like a good 3-point 90-inch plus type thing. Really trying to get folks something that is a good representative of the species and things like that. So
sure. In your mind, these Coues deer bucks, the ones that you're targeting that, are 100 inches or better, what age do you think that those deer, what age do the majority of those deer need to get to in order to see that 100-inch mark?
So, generally speaking, I would say 5 years old or more. It's going to depend on, when you have a big wildfire and then post fire for the next couple of years, you've got and you have decent rainfall, just an explosion of forage and things like that. So, generally speaking, age, genetics, and nutrition are the three factors that go into building a solid animal and getting it to its potential. Now, if you have an explosion in nutrition and the deer doesn't have quite the age or genetics, then things respond in different ways. But I would say to get to that 100-inch mark, I mean, you might have a 3.5-year-old deer that is approaching that on a good year. But what we're finding is typically 5 years plus for that deer to really get some good mass and length and start to realize its potential. I mean, we've got a deer we're watching right now that's pushing 9 years old, and last year he was an absolute tank, and we're kind of eager to see what he does this year, whether he's going to completely, diminish in terms of size or if he will hold that. But generally, I've been very surprised what how big deer stay despite how old they get, and generally speaking, 8 to 10 years old is very old for a deer. But anything over 5 is certainly, they're getting into their true potential.
Do you feel like Coues deer that are getting that, 8, 9, 10 years old, it sounds like what you're saying is you're surprised at how they hold their size.
Correct.
In most animals, when they, really reach maturity and then even start on the downhill slide, their points get shorter, but their mass gets bigger. Do you see that being the case with Coues deer as much, or is it, maximum potential as far as point length all the way till when they really start sliding downhill?
It's funny. I think some of these deer, as they get older, they get super big. They start to get some extras, here and there. They get super massive. And then when they really regress, they almost become like this big, wide, forky, or sometimes very tall, sometimes super heavy. I think it's very, very, it's deer specific almost, based on their genetics and stuff. But, you can always tell an older deer just by how they hold themselves, their body, antler configuration and composition. And just how they move too. I mean, as we age as humans, as we get older, we don't want to do a whole lot. The older we get, and a big mature Coues deer is just like that too. I mean, they really, their home range is very, very small, and much smaller than a lot of folks think they really are or have.
What does it take on Arizona public land for those deer to get 8+ years old?
So I think obviously good forage, and we've, especially in southern Arizona and even central Arizona, 22 and 23, 27, we've had a lot of different fires, creating kind of that mosaic of burns and different things, and triggering that early successional kind of forage growth and whatnot. Forage is super critical. And the thing that helps with that, like I said, are things like fires, and then post fire, obviously some rainfall to get things greened up. Generally speaking, I think Coues deer aren't quite as susceptible to kind of the wide differences in antler growth that we see, like with mule deer on the strip or elk in some of the more forested units. I think because of the variety of forage that they take advantage of, and just being super adaptable. I mean, they're a trooper species, and we're seeing them now more in these mule deer habitats than historically, and they're almost even bumping some of the mule deer out or out competing them. So
That was going to be my next question. In these mature deer, are you seeing a common characteristic or component where they exist? And you kind of answered it there before I even got to ask it, but it sounds like some of these bigger deer, well, I don't want to answer it for you, but it sounds like you're saying that they're bumping into the mule deer habitat, and that's where maybe they're slipping through the cracks.
yeah, that stuff. So obviously forage is important, but then also, living in these areas that they're not quite as accessible. I mean, super flat country that people don't even think to hunt them there, or the more mountainous stuff where they're in these pockets that are just hard to hunt. This forested woodlands type stuff that, regardless of how you glass it, it's super hard to pick through and find those deer, especially these older bucks when they're not moving a whole lot. So it's a combination of forage, of the habitats they're living in, that get them that age to be able to reach their potential. And then obviously, genetics. You've got to have genetics to grow good antlers, and you've got these little patches in different mountain ranges. You've got ranges in areas within those ranges that are known for just super genetics or unique genetics and stuff like that. So, it's certainly it's fun to it's fun to try and find these bigger deer, and it's oftentimes where we get kind of it's difficult to find these things sometimes, and that's why they get big and reach their potential, and that's why you see some of these bucks that are over 130, even approaching 140 type thing, that they're giants, and especially even in some of those forested countries too, that my brother had a late tag last year in Unit 8, and he was hunting one buck in particular, and those forest deer, they just you can't find them, and we spent upwards of a week trying to find this one particular deer, and had days of just not seeing any deer, not even one deer, for an entire day. So it can be a grind for sure.
You mentioned several things, one of which is there's units that are known for really good genetics. A question I would ask first is, are there some units in southern Arizona that, from your experience, either with the Game and Fish and or trouncing around the hills as a guide, are there some units that you would say historically that are just not known for great genetics?
Yeah, so the units generally with not great genetics, I've always been surprised with like Unit 32, and 32 does put out some great deer, don't get me wrong, but having flown it, you're flying over it thinking it should be absolutely infested with deer, and for whatever reason it's not, whether that's a forage component, a predator component, just a genetic component, whatever it is. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but so these units like 32, and again, all these units in southern Arizona can produce giant deer, but generally speaking, 32 isn't known for giant deer oftentimes. Spots in like 30A. Trying to think what else.
It's interesting because 32 was the exact unit I was thinking of. I've spent so much time in there, and as I know you have as well, time in places that I just know people haven't gotten into and penetrated, and then I go in other units, way easier to get into, way more accessible, and there's better deer. And we all know that there's a handful of really big deer probably in 32, but as a whole, I just over the years thought it would produce better deer consistently than it is. And I asked Dwayne Adams the same question, and he didn't like 32. He thought the genetics maybe were subpar, and he also thinks it's just a lion magnet over there, and the lions have it just seems like those deer can't get old. But even that, I've seen some old deer over there that just never amounted to much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that's spot on. It just, for whatever reason, it doesn't, and I think it's a variety of things that come into play. But yeah, generally 32 doesn't produce the number of big deer that you would see in, the 34A, 36s, 22, 23, 31, some of those units like that.
You've also said in the last 15, 20 minutes, you've mentioned wildfires a bunch of times. Obviously, there's a big giant wildfire that just swept through Unit 33. Give me your assessment of that fire, the condition of the deer, what it's going to take for it to rebound, all that good stuff.
So in 33, I mean, when that fire started down by Bighorn Mountain, I mean, I was praying that it would blow up, and it did, luckily. And a lot of people were really upset with what it did and whatnot. And I can understand that. But from a wildlife standpoint, these fires, I mean, 33 is going to blow up. It will absolutely blow up once we get some rain on the ground and let the vegetation do what it does. After the bullock and aspen fires in 0304, the deer just went completely crazy. And I mean, the Game and Fish Department could have allocated many more tags, but they were getting into a hunter density issue in terms of there were deer available, but hunter density and crowding was getting to be an issue, and so they had to, they had to back off in that regard. So 33, the fire that happened last year, the big issue with that was we didn't get any rain post-fire. The monsoon was largely absent, and it really, in December and January, and February for that matter, I mean, deer were eating burnt cactus and different things like that, and they were in really, really poor shape. So when the department, I think they've cut like 750 tags in 33 alone this year, which I completely support. 33 will rebound very strong, and I'm sure that people are going to see those tags return. But from a wildlife standpoint and a habitat standpoint, that fire and these wildfires that we've seen over the last few years in southern Arizona and central Arizona, I mean, they really do a lot of great stuff for wildlife.
In your opinion, though, with like 33, with no monsoonal moisture, or I shouldn't say no, but very little monsoonal moisture, and then here we've gone all year basically without much moisture on that fire.
Yep.
It's premature. Would you agree? It's premature for people to be jumping on the 33 wagon, which is coming as soon as some moisture gets on there. But aren't we 2, 3, 4 years out from probably seeing just an unbelievable explosion of deer and size of deer and everything in that unit?
Yeah, I think so. I think in reality, you're probably, depending on what happens this year, you're looking 2 to 3 years out, because once you get some fawns on the ground, you get the small bucks that start to get that nutritional benefit from the fires. It's going to take a few years to get them to a point where that they're a mature buck. So I would agree 100% that I would really consider my options in terms of deer opportunities this year. Again, 33 still got a fair number of deer. I mean, the rincons are still good, but I'm guessing you're going to have a lot of people focusing there instead of the Catalinas this year. But in terms of waiting and considering other options, I think there are better options out there than 33 right now.
I know you did for Shadow Valley Outfitters. I saw, and I'm looking at it right now, you did kind of a Shadow Valley Outfitters top picks for 2021, Arizona non-resident Coues deer options. And I noticed that you listed 34A as your top unit for trophy quality Coues. So I'll read it, but I want to come back to 34A. 34A, 36C, third pick is 29, fourth pick 36B, 24B, 33, 36A, 31, 23. Your top pick of 34A, talk about the Santa Ritas, talk about why that's your top pick.
So 34A has been producing some really good deer in the last probably 4 to 5 years or so. I think it's a combination of different. There's been a handful of fires in there. There's some lowland habitat that I think deer are able to get to their, the age that gets them large, I guess. There's some private property on the south end of the unit that frankly is, it's off limits to hunting. So you have deer that are able to grow older and then during the rut especially come up in these huntable areas, and you have this source and sink type effect, I guess. So it's genetically, it's a solid unit, always producing great deer. And you've got, super high stuff from the top of the Santa Ritas near Mount Wrightston to that low elevation country, just south of I-10 in Tucson. And you're finding Coues deer in a lot of those low areas that they get down there. No one thinks to look for them unless they're hunting, OTC mule deer or something like that. They see a big Coues deer. And then come the rut, those deer start moving around more and they're more observable. So, and it's a unit too. And when I put this list together, I tried to use a variety of things, and it's a unit that is relatively accessible too. I've talked to a lot of people, especially non-residents, who are getting up there in terms of age, and they have a bunch of bonus points, and they're looking for hunt options. And there are units that are much more physical, I guess, than other units. And so I tried to look at a number of things when I put this list together.
One of the things that I really like about 34A, and I've spent quite a bit of time in it, is a lot of Coues deer units are diverse, but there's hardly a unit that's as diverse as 34A, and you kind of hit on it from, Mount Wrightson, where it's thicker than thick and you can't see anything, down to the desert floor. But it's a perfect example of Coues deer could be at the very top or the very bottom and everywhere in between. And I think that's something that's pretty neat about the deer specifically, in that they could be found literally anywhere. They could be found in the forest where they cannot see more than 30 yards in any one direction, to the open desert floor that the only thing out there is, staghorn cholla cactus and maybe a couple of ocotillo and a mosquito or two out in the wide open. So it's pretty neat that they can inhabit, such a varied terrain. The second pick there you had was Unit 36C. Talk a little bit about that and why that was your second pick.
Well, 36C, I guess, has a lot of similarities to 34A in that, on the western side, you've got the reservation. Deer are relatively unhunted over there. On the southern end, you've got the border. So there's that source and sink effect again from deer coming back and forth from both areas. You've got high elevation country in the Babakivris, in the coyotes, that generally is, I don't want to say unhuntable, but Joe Public typically doesn't get into some of that stuff. And then you've got the super low flats that typically you'd see historically more mule deer in, but you're finding a lot of big whitetail in. So it's another unit that these deer can get some age, and we've seen a good versatility in terms of different burns over the last 5 to 8 years. It's created this kind of mosaic, and you've got a lot of different successional stages, I guess, of vegetation. So yeah, it's in historically tremendous genetics in 36C as well. And those deer, especially during the rut when they come over from the reservation, there's some tremendous bucks that can come over and get into that 36C huntable country that come from the reservation. So
yeah, makes sense. 29.
29. I would say mostly because of the recent burns, and there's as we speak, another fire going down there. I think right around that horseshoe, historic horseshoe fire. But with 29, it was kind of funny because the horseshoe fire and the horseshoe 2 fire, post those fires, 29 didn't do like what 33 did. It didn't completely explode initially, but then it's actually done quite well, and it's opened some of that country up. So 29 is one of those areas where it's much more mountainous, generally speaking. You've got a lot of different burned areas and unburned spots that deer can utilize that unburned and high quality forage, and then get into that into the fringe area where there's cover and stuff like that. So that's generally, and it's producing some great deer too. I mean, Mark Garenia, who's a guide with us, he had a lake tag a few years ago and killed an absolute giant down there, and they've been finding some really good deer. So yeah, kind of a number of things with 29, but it's producing great, and it's got tremendous genetic potential. Lots of private stuff around the base, which again, you've got that source and sink kind of effect too.
The next pick kind of surprised me, number 4, 36B. I got to be honest, that kind of surprised me to see it hit your number 4.
Yeah, 36B is one of those that, I had a chat with a friend of mine, George Alcorta, who has killed a ton of and guided a bunch of big Coues deer and whatnot. And we were talking about 36B, and 36B, I think probably right now 36B has the most tags in the state in terms of the unit. Prior to this year, it used to be 33 and then 36B, but there's a lot of these Ocotillo thickets in 36B where you can find deer sometimes, but actually getting them killed can be tricky. Archery, from an archery standpoint, I've been down there many times and been within archery range of great deer and literally with no shot because of the thickets of Ocotillos. There's a lot of stuff in terms of kind of from the Ruby Road south from a border standpoint that people don't really get into a whole lot because of the border issues. And then you've also got some of the recent fires in both the Tumacacres and the Atascosas that again have really opened up some of that country. So it does produce. It produces a ton of deer, and there are a lot of permits there. But it's still year after year producing some pretty good bucks, and it's relatively accessible too. And that's one of the things that when you look at the list and you see number 9, 23, and 31 is number 8. Accessibility kind of weighed into that too. I mean, don't get me wrong; those 2 units toward the end are producing some giant deer, but you also have to be, especially like with 31, you've got to be able to be physical to really get into a lot of that country, in my opinion.
It's a really steep mountain. Now, your 5th pick, 24B, I could really see this because of the latest fire. Talk about 24B. Yep.
Yeah, the fire 100%, and also just accessibility. I mean, it's got country that you could get lost, put your backpack on, get lost, and not see another hunter in the entirety of the hunt. So between fire and just overall terrain and accessibility, I mean, it's producing some great deer, and we've seen a handful of really big deer killed out of 24B in the last 5 years or so, some of which are in some spots where, again, you wouldn't even expect them. So, yeah, it's kind of a combination of things there with 24B, from the fire to terrain, accessibility, and I think it'll, now that we've got a couple years post-fire, it should really start to blow up.
Especially if we can get a good monsoon this year. I think it would have been amazing to have a great monsoon last year to see what that fire would do.
100%.
Your next pick, 33, you already talked about that. Number 7, 36A.
Yeah, 36A is one of those, again, generally speaking, besides the Sierritas, not a lot of mountainous country. But it's funny I mean, 36A is more known for mule deer, but when you start to get out on some of those knobs and you start glassing, you'll see as many Coues deer as mule deer, if not more. And it's because of that terrain that those deer are growing pretty large. And there was also a super low intensity burn last year down there that kind of just meandered through some areas and did a ton of good. And the deer were in that hot and heavy post burn. It got a little bit more rain down there than what like 33 did. So yeah, 36A is one of those, more because of the low elevation, the flat terrain, making it difficult to actually find and locate those bucks. And those deer are getting some age and maturity. And now with some of the fires and things, you've got that nutritional component. Again, the Coues deer, for whatever reason, they love the ocotillo thickets, and you can find some dog hair ocotillo thickets down there. So
and you've already talked about the Grams, Unit 31, Santa Teresa's a little bit, and then your ninth pick, 23, and we can come back to those two if you want. But one unit that I'm surprised that didn't make the list, I'm just curious if there's a specific reason 35A didn't make the top 9.
The 35A and B, they always produce some great deer. And there are some spots in there that are very huntable. It between some accessibility stuff and just it being thick, generally speaking, there's a lot of people that just kind of decide to go different directions, I guess. But if you're comfortable with sitting down, glassing, using big optics and good optics, and seeing fewer deer in general, then there's certainly potential there. Don't get me wrong at all. I mean, it's a great unit. But I've talked with a lot of people too, and I've even had some people who have hunted 23 in the past and more during like an OTC hunt, and they went an entire hunt without even seeing a deer. And generally speaking, the folks that I talk with, they would prefer to see more deer, even if they're not necessarily the caliber they're looking for, than not see any deer at all type thing. And picking through some of that forested, that woodland stuff can be tricky. And so again, don't get me wrong, it's got tremendous potential from a trophy standpoint, if you know what you're doing and you can hunt right.
I do have a question for you about some outlying units, 40A, 37A, 37B, kind of fringe, not known for Coues deer, but thoughts on those 3 units.
Yeah, I mean, so 40A, you've got deer clear out over toward Ajo, Coues deer in small little isolated pockets. They can roam over there through the reservation, and you'll find them in there. And typically, it's almost an untapped resource for Coues deer. So, in the same thing with 37A, I was on a sheep hunt with a friend last year at 37A, and the any antler deer hunt was going on during that time, and we ran into this guy, and he had killed like a 112 type Coues deer out in the middle of nowhere. So those outlier units are tremendous areas to go and try and find some of these older age class deer. If you go into it knowing that you're unlikely to see many, if any, Coues deer. But, again, if you're looking for a giant, sometimes that's where these jumbos are hiding, is those outliers like that.
I mean, but in those 3 units, you literally could be, you need to be prepared that you could go the whole time and never even see a Coues deer. And as long as you're okay with that, day after day after day, you just need to know what you're up for. You mentioned bouncing around in the silver bells. Can you give us an update on your thoughts on the sheep and the sheep over on the big on in 33.
Yeah, so the silver bells are doing well. I think they're planning another capture this year. I know they postponed a lot of surveys and capture efforts last year because of COVID. It's my understanding that they're looking to do another capture this year in the silver bells and continue to restore that population in the picachos. So I think that is being looked at and potentially planned. In terms of 33, the fire that happened in there was the best thing that's ever happened for that sheep herd in 33. I mean, it opens it up, predation. In some of those areas, sheep can actually get into some of that historic habitat that is now open. Predation should be much lower from lions and things like that because of increased visibility. And I mean, sheep are super adaptable. So all the fire and stuff like that, I mean, they're hot and heavy in that burn country right now. I have not seen any type of figures or anything from the Game and Fish in terms of recruitment or numbers, but last I heard was they were the last survey was better than they expected, and they're still optimistic, I think, and I think that things are looking good so far.
Well, fantastic. Ben, it's always great having you on the podcast. I know there's more that I could ask you about. We'll have to do it another time. I appreciate you spending time with us, and want to give you a chance. If there's anything that you think I missed or that you wanted to touch on, feel free to speak up, as well as give the listeners a chance where they can find how to follow you, how to speak with you more, and I'll be happy to link those up in the show notes as well.
Yeah, no, as always, I really appreciate the opportunity, Jay. Again, all the information, the one pager that I prepared, and it's focused on non-residents, but that's on our Instagram and Facebook sites, and that'll be on our website as well. And it kind of breaks down some of the trophy quality for Coues deer. If you're a non-resident and you've got bonus points, how many bonus points it takes to draw those late December tags. And you can, I was kind of, and that's using goHunt is in terms of the draw stats and stuff like that. But so you can check out there, what it would take if you've got some bonus points to take to draw a December tag, or if you're interested just in hunting Coues deer, and you have 0 points, what are your opportunities? And Coues deer are one of those things that you can very easily get a tag in a good tag and have a chance at killing a great deer by just putting in for one of these hunts that can be drawn with 0 points. So all that information is on that one-page sheet that I prepared. Again, it's on the Shadow Valley Outfitters Instagram, Facebook page, and it'll be on our website shortly. So if you need to get a hold of me, Bob, or Pat, again, you can do so on any of those platforms as well.
Ben, thanks for taking the time and sharing with us. It's always great talking to you. I love seeing the success you guys have and the big deer you guys are always chasing, and wish you the best of success this fall. If I don't chat at you, have a good elk season, and I know you'll be really grinding on these deer once they start growing and checking them out and watching them. So have fun with that, and I'll be chatting at you down the road.
All right. Thank you much, Jay. I appreciate it. You have a great day.
All right, buddy. God bless.
All right. Bye-bye.